We open up this week in Matthew 6, starting in verse 19. Jesus says, "Do not store up yourselves treasures on earth, where moths and vermin destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where moth and vermin do not destroy, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. The eye is the lamp of the body. If your eyes are healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eyes are unhealthy, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light within you is darkness, how great is that darkness? No one can serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money." This passage where Jesus he's talking in this famous Sermon on the Mount, he calls us out kind of right where we are as a culture today. We live in this flexing culture, guys. We love to flex our earthly possessions and our accomplishments, right? We love to show, look at my new watch, look at my new car, look at my new clothes. We see on TV and throughout all these famous people on social media and in our culture that if you have money, that money, it's the most valuable thing. Your earthly possessions are the most valuable thing. A lot of people find their value in these random earthly possessions that they have because that's what culture cares about, right? We want to see on social media, they want to see, oh, look at me, I went on an expensive vacation. Oh, look at me, I got this new outfit. We end up serving these earthly masters that come in the form of money, fame, social media, popularity, and tons of other earthly possessions. And I mean, why shouldn't we live like this, right? It looks so good. It looks so happy, so tempting. Everybody looks so happy, right? People have these amazing things. They show off these earthly accolades that they have. But guys, come on. What series are we in, right? We should know better. Of course, when the world is saying, flex what you have, look at me, pay attention to all these amazing things that I have, God's calling us, just like every other week, to live counterculturally. And Jesus tells us right here in Matthew that these possessions that we care about on earth, they're temporary. He says they can be eaten by vermin, destroyed by thieves. This isn't what I want to put my value in, what I want to flex with. Putting these value on these earthly things, these possessions, they lead to hardships. They can lead to death. What we should value is storing up treasures in heaven. So what does that kind of mean? How do we store up treasures in heaven? I'm not an investor. I'm not an accountant, but I kind of want to think in terms of investing right now. And when we invest in something, whether it's time, whether it's money, it's something we tend to care about, right? If you're investing in a sports team, you're investing your time, your talents, and you care about it a lot. So I remember this one time when I was a lot younger, and I invested kind of the first big thing I saved up money for, and I invested in an iPod, and I thought it was the coolest thing. I treasured it more than anything, took it everywhere I went, always had my little games on it. I valued it over so much else because I had saved my money, I had invested my money into getting this thing. And the world, it tells us to invest in ourselves, invest in making myself look good, investing in my own things that I can flex with, right? Invest in a nice car, invest in nice clothes, invest in these super fancy things that make me look better than everybody else. But God, once again, tells us to flip the script, and he says, do something counterculturally. And that's to invest in God's kingdom and in his people, guys. So how do we do this? How do we invest in heaven? How do we invest in God's kingdom? If you remember a few months back, we were in our face-to-face series, and we talked about a lot of spiritual disciplines. This is exactly how we invest in his kingdom, by doing these spiritual disciplines. We talked about prayer, generosity, getting in the word, celebrating each other, having fellowship together, and serving one another. Guys, the way that we store up treasures in heaven is we live like Jesus. We do these spiritual disciplines. I mean, all the things that we've talked about during countercultural, right? We've talked about giving, right? We've talked about loving our enemies. We've talked about treating our bodies like a temple, how we grow in times of persecution, striving for God's approval above any others, risking for Christ, and just living counterculturally. That's what Jesus calls us to do. So we see that these treasures in heaven, they're abundant, right? They're a lot different. They're eternal. They're so much better than these things of the earth that are fleeting. But maybe we're like, okay, man, like doing all these living counterculturally, all these spiritual disciplines, it's hard, right? It's not easy. And there's no issues with caring about cars more than Jesus sometimes, caring about social media presence more than reading the Bible. But guys, Jesus, he stops right there and he says, guys, pay attention to this. In verse 22, he says, if your eyes are healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eyes are unhealthy, your body will be full of darkness. Jesus is telling us right here that what we focus on, what our eyes are set on, will dictate how we act and what light shines out of us. In this same sermon, in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus here, he talks about how being a Christian, we're supposed to be this light on a hill, right? We're supposed to show off this light to the world. But what happens if we're full of darkness because our eyes are set on things of this world and there is no light? What if every single one of us focused on earthly things and that light was extinguished? That's a sad day. Our world would be full of darkness. And this is what happens when we focus on earthly things, when we fix our eyes on these earthly things. When we flex what we have on earth over what we have in heaven, we become full of darkness. And so we say, again, this is this bargaining with God. We're saying, can't we have both? Can't I have these earthly possessions, care about them, and care about you, God, and have you on, the same level? In verse 24, Jesus blatantly says, no one can serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. We can't serve money, clothes, phones, any earthly possessions more than God. I mean, we always kind of think, all right, God's here. Maybe family's right there, friends, grades, sports, popularity, tangible things that we have. That's the order of things. But Francis Chan, this great preacher, he says it a different way. He says, God should be your first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth. He should be all of your priorities, guys. It shouldn't be all these things right close to God. God should be the top priority. Everything else is down here, but God is up here. And all of this today, it really makes me think of a study that I did with Purpose a few weeks ago, our college ministry here at Branches. We dove in to why we need to trust in God's character and how much greater he is than the world. We looked at how God's character really makes us realize that he is so much greater to put your life around, put your faith in than the world. And we looked at these 6 traits of God. We said that he is loving, good, merciful, all-knowing, infinite, and all-powerful. And really this got me thinking about these things that we like to flex, right? We're flexing our earthly possessions. Why do we do this? Why do we love to show off our new outfit or our new phone or our new watch? It's like, look at me. Look at how cool I am. I have this amazing thing. I have this valuable thing. I have this thing that everybody else wants, right? Guys, what better thing do we have to flex about than God? Think about it. Think about these traits that I just said. He's loving, good, merciful, all-knowing, infinite, all-powerful. What more valuable and amazing thing do we have to flex about than God? Nothing. God is the most valuable thing that we can flex about. We can flex and say, look, I know this all-knowing, this good, loving God, and I have a relationship with him. And this is the other part that I love, right? So countercultural. As another thing that we love to flex is, I have this and you don't. I have this new fancy thing, but you don't have it. But guys, the great thing about God is it's flexing. Look, I know my creator. I know my God. But you can know him too. I mean, come on. I want to show you who this amazing God is. I want to flex him, flex who he is. But I want you to have that too. It's not just for me. It's not a selfish thing. It's showing off how great our God is so that other people can know that too. We're told in 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 17, it says, "But let the one who boasts boast in the Lord. For it is not the one who commends himself who is approved, but the one whom the Lord commends." Boast in the Lord, guys. Flex in the Lord. I want to challenge you this week to spiritually flex. Flex in your prayers for others. Flex in giving your money, giving away those earthly possessions this week. Think about giving online, something like that. Flex in how good your God is. Flex in telling people about how good your God is. Just flex spiritually this week, guys, instead of flexing on earthly possessions. I just want to close us in prayer tonight if you want to join me. Dear Lord, I thank you for everyone who is watching this today, God. I want to put in them a spirit of almost humility to give up their wanting to earthly show off and to value earthly possessions over heavenly possessions, Lord. I want to thank you that we have this ability to flex in you, Lord, that we have this amazing God who we know is worth being proud of, showing off that you are a good and loving Father, God. I thank you for all that you do and for all that you are in our lives. And we ask this in your name. Amen.